Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to have you back with us again on this program. And before we begin, I want to just go over something that I've been asked by many of the viewers is, how do I avail myself of the previous episodes? And the answer is very simple. You go on YouTube, you put on A Time for Truth show, and find and click on the subscribe button, and we will have you as one of our viewers. That's how simple it is. So tonight, we have a very special show because it deals with a man who not only accomplished tremendous goals and changes in his sport, but has dedicated himself to the youth of our inner cities and bringing them together through sports, through social interaction, and it's a very important story to heed, and we'll get started with it immediately. Buddha, if you put him up on the screen, and we will introduce our viewers to Paul Williams, president of the New York Athletic Club, Killers Club. And there you see him diving for a ball. Amazing. There you look at that. That's a real shot. He's founder and was president of the Inner City Handball Association for 25 years. And presently is its financial chairman. ICHA is a non-profit volunteer youth organization dedicated to providing inexpensive handball-related athletic activities and promoting academic excellence to teens throughout New York City. And there you see us recently this weekend with Bob McCullough at the Pro Rucker Legends Gala and talking about drug education and helping the youth of the New York City area. He was born in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, and he knows firsthand the plight of inner city youths. New York City, without doubt, can be very tough on teens who do not have any kind of positive activity to occupy their free time, which has been a problem in recent years with cutbacks and changes. Paul always found handball to be a fun, a stress reliever, as well as a violent deterrent. And it's that message that he primarily promotes to the teens in his ICHA program. Mr. Williams' involvement in handball doesn't stop with the administration of New York City, but he also served as board of the United States Handball Association for 15 years and held the position of vice president for 6 years. In addition, he served as vice president to the World Handball Council for 6 years and subsequently became president for another 6 years. Paul works hard to promote the sport, and his work with ICHA has helped pave the way for the first ever 1997 World One Wall Handball Championships that occurred in Winnipeg, Canada. From the streets of New York City to the world-class events, he has no boundaries and wants handball to make a comeback in a big way. He volunteers to support the sport in so many different ways. and is a national open doubles champion in one wall, winning titles in 94 and 95, and also winning titles in 3-wall and 4-wall handball. The personal friendships and contacts he's made over the years have been invaluable. It's one of the many reasons why he works hard at giving teens the opportunity to experience such a great sport. ICHA has survived since 1991 due to the generous support of private citizens like you and I. But it's Mr. Williams' goal to hopefully convince corporate America to support his program. And I would say that I would second that motion. Sounds like he has a full-time job, and to many of us it would be, but Paul is a dynamic individual. When he's not promoting the sport, he's found developing his computer consulting company called GI Integrated Computer Solutions, Inc. in Jamaica, Queens, New York. And Buddha, if you will, let's bring him up live on our screen. Welcome to A Time for Truth show, Mr. Paul Williams.
How you doing, Dr. Fialkoff?
I'm doing very well. You know, your bio is very impressive because when I read it, it's full of caring, and there's a certain feeling I feel. But rather than me talking, I want to ask you, how was your initial life in Brooklyn when you were a kid?
Growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, could be a little tough and challenging at times. But I had good parents. My mother, she, was Board of Ed school secretary for like 30 some odd years. And my father was a career Navy sailor, chief petty officer in the end for about 35 years. So, I had a good family structure. So, being out in the street, I was a latchkey kid like many others, because my parents was working. My father was overseas most of the time, my mother was working. The only thing that she made a focus of was making sure we had good grades or we couldn't play handball. Couldn't play handball, couldn't go out to see friends, couldn't do a lot of things unless we maintained our grades. So I was in the house a lot. And as you got older, you wanted to get out. But, streets of Bed-Stuy was a little bit dangerous. You had gangs. It was a little bit different than now. In those days, the gangs, would try and beat you to a pulp as opposed to shooting you, So it was a little bit different. Sometimes you could outrun them. Sometimes you stood up and fought them. But, it was different than what it is now with all the gun play, But playing handball was sort of like a savior for me because that was able to allow me to stay in a group, meet different people of the same mindset. And not for nothing, even if there were gang members that played, if you were a good player, they wanted you to play with them, so they protected you because, you were a good player and they wanted you on their side. So if anybody bothered you, it's like, no, hey, leave them alone. And that was good, kind of weird being in your own neighborhood and feeling that way. But I was always curious, and I would go out to other areas riding a bike into different neighborhoods. And, if I went into a neighborhood that was like maybe East New York or Brownsville, because I was from Bed-Stuy, I was an outsider. So I could get myself in trouble, even though I may have been the same color. But it was even worse when I would go out to maybe Coney Island or, Bay Ridge. Then I was definitely a person of a different color. And it was like, why are you even in this neighborhood? And sometimes it became a little bit contentious. But, most of the time, once you got to your destination, sometimes I would get a police escort in the beginning, especially going to Coney Island Avenue U was like the dividing point. Once you got past that, people would wonder why you're there, why you're going there. But once you got to the courts, it was a little bit better, especially if you proved yourself to be a worthy player. Brooklyn was a little tough when I was younger. But
very, very interesting what you're saying because, you look like you were a social activist at a very young age. Is that true?
Um, it was sort of forced on me a little bit. I didn't intend to be a social activist at all. Um, I guess there was sort of a mentor of mine named Eugene Woods. He was the only African American member of Brooklyn Union Temple, which was a Jewish club that had handball courts. And he saw me playing probably at the age of about 13, 14. And he decided to sponsor me with a group of, he was from Bed-Stuy, but he had handball player friends from Harlem. And they decided to give me a 2-year membership at Brooklyn Union Temple. Since he was a member, he got me in. And I got to meet then a different world of handball players. Instead of being those street players from different neighborhoods, this was a club where professional people who had really good jobs in different fields, teachers, doctors, firemen, policemen, all not people of color, but they welcomed me to some extent once I proved myself. And the reason why Gene did that was sort of to show that the players in the street were just as good and can go into that environment and be successful. And he wanted me to expose me to that. So he sort of made him and those others sort of put me into that situation of social activism because I grew up with the assassinations of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, John F. K, and they stood for human rights, and trying to make things better for everyone to work together. So I didn't really see color as much because I was a kid, and I think most kids don't really see color unless they're confronted with it. I went to a private elementary school, which was St. Augustine's Elementary School, which predominantly black, and then I went to Brooklyn Tech, which was very mixed and very different. But when I went to Brooklyn Tech, it was an environment that was pretty welcoming as long as you did well in your grades. And after you're in that environment of playing handball, you're playing really well, you get entered into tournaments into different neighborhoods, and whether or not you're called names in derogatory terms, the focus was, Gene and them would always say, focus on your game, be the best that you can be. Make sure if you're the best, no one can take that away from you. And so you just try to be the best that you can be. And then I did that also with school and work, and it just became part of my ethic, work ethic and educational ethic throughout my life. And it was that involvement with handball and meeting people of different cultures and different professions that helped me understand other cultures, helped me understand myself, and just it was just a great experience because most of those friends, I've been playing handball for 50 years, actually, I guess 53 years. And a lot of friends of mine I've had for 45 years or more that have known me since I was a junior, in one capacity or another. And with all the tournaments I've been through tournaments across the United States, Canada, Ireland, Italy, and it's been a really good experience. And I think I've been respected in those countries and throughout the country because of the work that I do with kids, as well as the work that I've done in organized handball. Um, you know, I would,
I can see that because you know um, the fact that you were able to experience and confront what was going on, that you melded in and showed them who you were, and it says a lot. It says a lot about you and what you've been doing. Really, it's easy to see why you've done so much. And you kind of got into a little bit already, and I was going to ask you, because at the age of 30, you became national champion in handball. What was that like? What was the feeling to you after having gone through all of what you just relayed? Here you are now at age 30, you're national champion.
it was a good feeling. Actually, the year before, when I came in second with that picture that you showed me diving,
Yeah.
that actually was the first year that I was in the nationals in the open division, and I came in second. Me and my partner came in second. We lost 11-10 tiebreaker. And so we came in second, and I was on the cover of the magazine. it was even more, almost more exciting than winning the next year as being a champion, because it was that close and everyone made a big deal of it. When we actually won, my partner and I ended up winning. It was a big deal, and but some people look at it as a fluke. But I was in the finals the year before, and then became champion the next year. And then my partner and I, Eddie Masonette, we ended up winning 2 more successful years, and then placing second 3 more years after that. So for the whole '90s, we were in the finals 6 times. Actually, I was in 7 times into the finals, which was amazing, and it was a good feeling. And you know what? It motivated a lot of other young people to then say they wanted to learn how to play a little bit better, especially kids of color. In fact, 1992, I ended up going to Ireland to do an invitational tournament in Bray, Ireland, of one wall handball, to the World Handball Council at that time, because that was only a 4 wall tournament that they had for the Worlds every 3 years. And they wanted to maybe include 1 wall, but they didn't really know a lot about it and how competitive it really was. So I took a young man, Jason Morgan from East New York, Joe Kaplan from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, Kendall Lewis from East Flatbush, and Jai Ragu from the Bronx. And so I took them to Ireland, and we did an exhibition, and everybody was amazed. We were on television almost every day. We were there for 10 days, and we were on television almost every day, every town we went to, because they never saw really people of color play handball. And whether we played 1 wall handball or we played in the tournament, to them it was like, it's kind of incredible. It's unheard of, and that sort of made the way of me really wanting to get involved with international handball and national at a larger level. Because, like you said, if you see a problem, instead of being part of the problem, try and be part of the solution. And that's why I decided to get involved with organized handball a little bit more, to try and change that perspective of how people felt about handball players that were not quite like them.
Very, very interesting story. There's another incident that occurred during your initial stages. In August 23, 1991, there was all this rioting going on and unrest in Brooklyn. And here you have a tournament that you planned at St. John's Recreation Center in Crown Heights. And there was a lot of tumult. And somehow you start having this tournament anyway. Tell our viewers, what was the climate like, and what happened?
Well, you know what? That was the second tournament of what I call the Inner City Classic. And when I first started in 1991, I wanted to have a series of tournaments in different neighborhoods to get the kids real active. And so the first one was, in Bed-Stuy, on Kingston Park and Atlantic Avenue, and we had a good turnout, especially parents that came from like Long Island with beach chairs, which was kind of unheard of, coming to the tournament in Bed-Stuy at that time. So the second tournament, I was like, okay, this is going to be even bigger. And so we had it at St. John's Park, which is in Crown Heights. And then unfortunately, they had the Crown Heights riots between, the Caribbean American community and the Hasidic Jewish community. And it was, major riots that was going on maybe about 8 to 10 blocks away from St. John's Park. And so I lived in Long Island at the time. So I was like, maybe we'll cancel this. And then I had calls from parents saying, why are you canceling the tournament when St. John's is on, St. John's Park is on the other side of Eastern Parkway. The Eastern Parkway was like the dividing line of, the area of Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy in a way. And, I said, well, it could be kind of dangerous. And they still decided to have it. And maybe 3 days before the tournament, Jimmy Breslin got pulled out of the 77th precinct, I think it was. They had a whole big riot there, which is like maybe 3 blocks away from the park. But the kids and their parents said they would go around the other way, come up Atlantic Avenue instead of going Eastern Parkway and crossing Eastern Parkway. So we still had about maybe 30 kids that wanted to play, and they're kids of different ethnicities. So I said to myself, they want to play, they want to come. I think it's safe enough to do that since I grew up in that neighborhood. So I drove, I came out the way, I set up the tournament, and we had the tournament. And it ended up being a great tournament, with the kids that different ethnicities had a good time. We had no problem with the riot at all. It didn't come near the park at that time. Like I said, the biggest incident was 3 days before, but
Mhm.
then the police basically um, quieted it down. So it was still going on Eastern Parkway, but that's still a good distance away from us. But the whole idea was that, um, everyone should play. There are differences between everyone. If people want to play, if families want to play, as long as there's no direct harm that's really, that felt that they were facing, then we still did it. And we did it, and it was successful. And we ran 3 tournaments after that event, and each one was bigger than each other, than the previous one. And, in those days, we had tournaments with just like 30, 40 kids. Now we have tournaments 150 kids, sometimes 230. So, it's New York life. Eventually everyone gets along.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you something because there's so much going on, not only in New York City and not only in our country, but really worldwide. And a lot of unrest, a lot of unsocial unrest, and differences between different groups, whether it be nationality or religion or racial. And here you are, and doing all of these things, and have done all these things. So I think that you're a person who's actually done a lot of positive activity in the midst of negativity. So what would you say were some of your tenets or principles that you followed that have led to the success that the viewers watching this and the leaders out there watching this could apply to help to improve the situation, let's say in New York City?
Well, for me, it's always been, first of all, faith in God. Having faith in my religion, Episcopal, has always served me well. I always believe that um, God is watching over me, my guardian angels are watching over me. And as long as I follow, 10 commandments and treat everyone with respect, dignity, you know, and treat them the way I would like to be treated, that everything will work itself out. And so I don't. Most people looked at me in the early years and said, "Well, you should be playing basketball or football," because of my color, not because of anything else. "Oh, I'm big, and my color. That's what I should be doing." And I was like, "Why?" I love handball, and I want to play handball, so that's what I'm going to do. And so when I met kids, different nationalities that want to play handball in my handball clinics or handball tournaments, I treat them the same way. They're handball players. They want to learn the sport. They get to meet new people. They get to leave their, a lot of people didn't travel outside of their neighborhoods. Even today, some people never go from Brooklyn to Bronx, or Bronx to Manhattan. And you're like, are you kidding? All these years in your life and you've never traveled outside your borough or even outside your neighborhood. And I encourage people to travel. I've been traveling since I was 15, and so I enjoy going to tournaments, even though before it was a little rough, because people when they look at you, you're from New York. It's not even the color of your skin, but you're a New Yorker. That's even worse. you know. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But still, once everyone gets to know you, it's no real problems.
Absolutely. And you know what? It almost, I don't know if I should ask this question, but I want to ask this question. Why have you decided to be such a strong mentor for so many youth?
Um, I just want to give them the opportunity that I had. I was able to be sponsored by, some people that thought that I had some talent, thought that I would benefit from being exposed to the environment that they showed me. And they were right. I benefited from it. Um, I appreciated it. And instead of it doing it just for one person like they did for me, I figured why not do it for hundreds of kids if I could. This way it took me till 30 years old to, be able to do that financially to even, start it. Because when I started, I had to use my own money. For the first 5 years, it was kind of tough, but I felt that it was worthwhile. because I love the sport, and when you love something that much, it's just like you just want to see it succeed. And I just wanted to make sure that I could play for the next. Maybe part of it was selfish too. I wanted to play for the next 30 years also. When you see not that many players in my age category was around, and I said the only players that's going to come up are the players from our young generation. So the only way they're going to come up is if I play ball with them. And so if I teach them, and obviously for the next 40 years I've been playing. And some of the kids that was in my group when they were 12 and 15, we're still going to tournaments now in their age 45, almost 50. It's amazing.
It really is. We're reaching the end of the show. We have about a half a minute, but everything you said has been so important. What concluding remark do you want to leave these people watching the show about life in general? Go ahead.
Well, not even life in general, but, everyone just needs to treat each other with respect and dignity. I hope that maybe through this that, people recognize the sport of handball as one of those vehicles, especially in the city of New York, where you have 2,000 handball courts in different communities of the city, that give everyone the opportunity to play and be able to. I'm hoping corporate America decides to realize that organizations like mine, the City Handball Association, that are 501c3 charities, need their donations and support to build the sport. It's a worldwide sport, but we don't get those corporate sponsorships at all. And you know what? And especially in areas of East New York, Brownsville, Bed-Stuy, even though it's going under gentrification, now they're still like trying to wipe out the courts and not giving any people of color an opportunity to even play. And that's crazy. Some of the top players that we've had all these 50 years are people of color, people that are mixed, and it's a great sport. So we're hoping that they just, support it. We have a new handball channel that we just put up, and I was a co-creator of. That's it should be great on Roku devices.
What is it called? What is it called?
It's called the Handball Channel. It's
Good.
on Roku. It's a Roku
okay.
TV. Yeah, Roku TV. It's a streaming channel 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we just need some corporate advertisements on that to help it propel the sport. And I'm hoping
and I want to make sure, and what is the email that people should contact you at, or your website? Go ahead.
They can contact me at PW, which is Paul, PW, P for Paul, W for Williams. It says PW at allthingshandball.com. PW at allthingshandball.com. That's the easiest one to reach me.
Good. Well, unfortunately, Mr. Williams, we've run out of time. I got to tell you that I've done a lot of shows, but this one really, I can see that your mission is so important. And for those corporate sponsors who are out there, look at what's going on in our world. Look at the violence and the crime. Look at the racial and religious strife. And here we have a way of decreasing that's been proven, that's not going to be expensive. Let's support the Inner City Handball Association's idea with Mr. Paul Williams. And for those of you out there, support him also. And I thank you for what you're going to do. And Paul Williams, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Doc. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you inviting me here.
It's my pleasure. Have a good night. We'll see you again on the next show of A Time for Truth.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet